My fingers trembled as I stared at Brandon's phone, the bright screen illuminating words that shouldn't exist. 3 years of text messages to someone named Nora. 3 years of "I miss you and can't wait to see you," and "my wife doesn't understand me." I had to read them twice, 3 times, until the words burned themselves into my brain. I'm Isla, and until 5 minutes ago, I thought I knew what betrayal meant. The kitchen counter felt cold under my palms as I steadied myself. 26 years of marriage reduced to a series of digital love notes and explicit photos. Brandon had left his phone unlocked when he rushed to take that emergency business call in the backyard. Now I knew why he always took those calls outside. "Mom, everything okay?" Lucas appeared in the doorway, his college graduation photo still prominently displayed on the fridge behind him. My son, perceptive as always. "Just checking the time," I lied, sliding the phone back to its exact position on the counter. The muscle memory of covering for Brandon kicked in automatically, even now. "Your father's been on that call forever." Lucas crossed his arms, looking so much like his grandfather, my father, in that moment that my chest ached. "You're white as a sheet." "Must be the lighting." The words came out hollow. Through the window, I could see Brandon pacing near the oak tree, gesturing animatedly. He was wearing the blue shirt I'd ironed this morning, the one I'd bought him for our anniversary last month, the same shirt he wore in one of those photos with her. "I should start dinner," I said, but made no move toward the refrigerator. My mind was already racing ahead, calculating. The joint accounts, the farm my parents left us, the life insurance policies. "Mom!" Lucas's voice was gentle. "What did you find?" I turned to face my son, this young man who'd grown up watching me smooth things over, make excuses, keep the peace, just like my mother had done, until the day she died. The Thompson women, always protecting their men from consequences. "Nothing that wasn't there all along," I said finally. "I just wasn't looking." Brandon's laugh drifted through the window, that rich, charming sound that had first drawn me to him at 19, the same laugh he probably used on Nora, 26 years old, the same age I was when Lucas was born. "Whatever it is," Lucas said, "you don't have to handle it alone." I picked up the knife I'd been using to chop vegetables before Brandon's phone had buzzed with that fatal message. The weight felt good in my hand. Solid. Real. "You're right," I said, setting it down carefully. "I don't." Brandon's voice grew louder as he approached the back door. I could time it perfectly. 3 steps across the patio, 2 more to the door, then he'd breeze in with some excuse about work, kiss my cheek, and ask what's for dinner, like he had 1,000 times before. But this time would be different. This time I wouldn't smile and nod. This time I thought of my father's words on his deathbed. "The farm's yours, Isla. Don't let anyone take what's yours." I heard the back door open. "Sorry about that, honey," Brandon called out. "You wouldn't believe the day I'm having." I picked up his phone, unlocked it again with the password I wasn't supposed to know, and turned to face the door. "Actually," I said, "I think I would." The look on his face told me everything I needed to know about the war that was coming, and for the first time in 26 years, I was ready to fight. The next morning, I watched Brandon pack his overnight bag like it was any other business trip. His movements were precise, practiced, the same routine I'd watched for 26 years. Only now I noticed how he checked his phone 3 times while folding a single shirt. "The Thompson account needs my personal attention," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I'll be back Thursday." I nodded, thinking of the texts I'd seen. "Can't wait for our weekend getaway." The timestamp showed Nora had sent it yesterday afternoon. "The farm's property taxes are due next week," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We should discuss the payment before you leave." Brandon's hand stilled over his suitcase. "I thought we agreed to sell the back 40 acres. "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "You suggested it. I never agreed." "Isla." He used that tone, the one that always made me feel small, unreasonable. "The farm's bleeding us dry. Your parents wouldn't want—" "Don't!" My fingers curled around the doorframe. "Don't tell me what my parents would want." Lucas appeared in the hallway, coffee mug in hand. The tension in the room hit him like a physical wave. "Everything okay?" "Your mother's being stubborn about the farm again," Brandon said, zipping his bag with unnecessary force. Lucas set his mug down. "The farm that puts food on our table? The one that paid for my college? The one that's now worth millions to developers," Brandon countered. "We could all retire tomorrow if—" If we betrayed everything my father built? The words escaped before I could stop them. Brandon's head snapped up, eyes narrowing at my choice of words. I need to check the accounts, I continued, softer now. Make sure we have enough for the taxes. I'll handle it. Brandon reached for his laptop bag. Like I always do. No, I stepped forward. I think it's time I took a more active role in our finances. The silence that followed felt like thunder before a storm. Brandon's smile didn't reach his eyes. Honey, you've never shown interest in the business side before. Why start now? Because it's my legacy too. I met his gaze. My name's on those accounts. Lucas moved closer to me, his presence solid and reassuring. I can help, Mom. My degree's in finance, after all. Brandon's laugh held an edge. This isn't a school project, son. No, Lucas replied. It's family. The word hung between us like an accusation. Brandon checked his watch, another practiced gesture I now saw through. We'll discuss this when I return, he said, shouldering his bags. I have a plane to catch. As he headed for the door, I called after him. Brandon, the Thompson account. That wouldn't happen to be in Aspen, would it? He paused, just for a fraction of a second. Denver, why? Just curious. I smiled, thinking of Nora's Instagram post from yesterday. A ski resort tagged in Aspen. Have a safe flight. After he left, Lucas turned to me. Mom, I need you to teach me everything you know about forensic accounting, I said, still staring at the door. And I need you to be discreet about it. Does this have anything to do with what you saw on Dad's phone? I thought of my mother, how she'd kept quiet about my father's struggling farm until it was almost too late. How she'd finally taken charge, saved everything through sheer determination. The steel in her spine when she told my father, "This ends now." This has everything to do with protecting what's ours, I said. Your grandfather didn't build this legacy, so your father could sell it to the highest bidder. Lucas nodded slowly. Or spend it on someone else. My son, too perceptive by half. Get your laptop, I said. We've got 3 days before he returns, and I want to know exactly where every penny has gone. As Lucas disappeared upstairs, I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. The password Brandon thought I didn't know unlocked 26 years of financial records. Somewhere in those numbers, Nora's footprints would be waiting, and this time, I wouldn't look away. The numbers on Lucas's laptop screen blurred together as midnight approached. 2 days of digging through financial records had left me numb until I saw it, a pattern of transfers to an offshore account, each one timed perfectly with the farm's quarterly profits. He's been doing this for 5 years, Lucas said, his voice tight. Every time the farm turned a profit, he diverted half to this account in the Caymans. I stared at the total, $2.3 million. My father's legacy, draining away like water through cupped hands. There's more, Lucas continued, clicking through documents. The development company interested in the back 40? Dad's been meeting with them for months. He's already signed preliminary paperwork. The betrayal felt physical, like a fist to the stomach. He can't sell without my signature. No, but... Lucas hesitated. Mom, he's been forging your signature on other documents. Small things at first, but recently... A notification popped up on my phone. Brandon's nightly check-in call. I let it ring. Show me everything, I said. Lucas pulled up document after document. My signature, almost perfect but slightly off, appeared on loan applications, property assessments, even a power of attorney I'd never seen. The bank called earlier, Lucas said quietly. They're concerned about unusual activity on the farm's business account. My phone buzzed again. A text from Brandon. Why aren't you answering? Everything okay? I thought of my mother's voice. A Thompson woman knows when to fight. She'd said it the day we discovered my father's cancer, when the medical bills threatened to overwhelm us. She'd fought then, saved the farm, saved us all. We need to move fast, I said. How much can we legally transfer before he returns? Lucas's fingers flew over the keyboard. The farm account's in both your names, but the equipment loan is only in his. If we... A sharp knock at the front door cut him off. Through the window, I saw Walter Thompson's Mercedes in our driveway, its headlights still burning. Uncle Walter? Lucas frowned. It's almost midnight. I stood, smoothing my shirt. Let him in. Walter Thompson filled the doorway like a storm cloud, his expensive suit incongruous in our farmhouse kitchen. Isla, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. Brandon called. Says you're not answering his calls. I've been busy, I replied. Looking at our finances. Something flickered in Walter's eyes. Brandon handles all that. Not anymore. I gestured to Lucas's laptop. Would you like to see what your nephew's been doing with my family's money? Walter stepped closer, his cologne too sharp in the small space. Whatever you think you found, 2.3 million, I cut in. Transferred to the Caymans, plus forged signatures, hidden accounts, and a deal to sell land he doesn't fully own. Business is complicated, Walter said, but his confidence wavered. Brandon knows what he's doing. Yes, I agreed. He's stealing from me to fund his new life with Nora Sanders. The same Nora who used to work for your company. The one you fired last year for embezzlement. Walter's face went slack. How did you... I called your secretary. Margaret still likes me, even if you don't. She told me everything about Nora's creative accounting. And now she's got her hooks in Brandon. Lucas stood beside me, shoulder to shoulder. Walter looked between us, calculation replacing shock. What do you want? He asked finally. I thought of Brandon in Aspen, probably celebrating his clever schemes with his young girlfriend. Thought of my father's calloused hands working this land, my mother's quiet strength preserving it. I want what's mine, I said, and I want Brandon to learn what it feels like to lose everything he thought was secure. Walter's laugh was cold. You're going to war with the wrong people, Isla. No, I replied, thinking of the evidence safely backed up on 3 different devices. I'm finally fighting the right ones. As Walter turned to leave, I called after him. Tell Brandon I'll see him Thursday. And Walter? The SEC might be interested in those offshore accounts you helped him set up. The door slammed behind him. Lucas let out a shaky breath. Mom, are you sure about this? I looked at my son, seeing my father's determination in his eyes. Some things are worth burning bridges for. We turned back to the laptop, and I began to type an email to our family lawyer. Thursday was coming, and I had a legacy to protect. The morning before Brandon's return, I found myself in my parents' old bedroom, now my home office. The lawyer's documents lay spread across my mother's antique desk, each page outlining a different betrayal. Loan applications, property liens, forged signatures. My phone buzzed. Another message from Brandon. Coming home early, we need to talk. A familiar perfume bottle caught my eye, still sitting on the dresser where my mother left it. The day before she died, she'd told me, sometimes the hardest part isn't discovering the truth, it's deciding what to do with it. Lucas appeared in the doorway, his laptop in hand. Mom, you need to see this. He pulled up an email chain between Brandon and the developers. The most recent message made my blood run cold. Once the property transfers are complete, we'll proceed with the full acquisition. Mrs. Thompson's signature won't be an issue. There's more, Lucas said, scrolling down. They're not just after the back 40. They want the whole farm. And Dad, he's already promised it to them. The room seemed to tilt. When? The final meeting's scheduled for next week. They're offering $30 million. I touched my mother's perfume bottle, remembering how she'd fought to keep this land when the banks threatened foreclosure. Show me the rest. Lucas hesitated. Mom, maybe we should wait. Show me. He pulled up another document. A prenuptial agreement I'd never seen. Dated 3 weeks ago. Brandon's name. Nora's name. A property division that left me with nothing. The doorbell rang downstairs. That's probably Margaret, Lucas said. She said she had more documents from Uncle Walter's office. I'll get it. But when I opened the door, Nora Sanders stood on my porch. She wore expensive clothes that tried too hard, jewelry that sparkled too bright. Young, beautiful, and utterly calculated. Mrs. Thompson, she said, her smile perfect and practiced. I think it's time we talked. I should have slammed the door. Instead, I stepped aside. Come in. She walked into my house like she already owned it, her heels clicking on the hardwood floors my father had installed. Lucas appeared at the top of the stairs, his face darkening when he saw our visitor. I'll make coffee, he said, his tone making it clear he'd stay close. Nora settled onto our couch, the one Brandon and I had picked out together 15 years ago. I assume you know who I am. I know what you are. I remained standing. The question is, why are you here? To make a deal. She opened her designer bag, pulled out a folder. Brandon doesn't know I'm here. He thinks charm and manipulation will handle everything. Men usually do. I thought of Walter's warning about going to war with the wrong people. What kind of deal? The kind where you walk away with dignity and $10 million. She slid the folder across the coffee table. Better than fighting a losing battle, don't you think? I picked up the folder but didn't open it. And if I refuse? Then things get ugly. Her smile never wavered. Brandon's not the only one who knows how to forge signatures. One wrong move and you'll lose everything, including your son's trust when certain documents come to light. The threat hung in the air like smoke. From the kitchen doorway, Lucas watched, his hands gripping his laptop like a shield. I thought of my father's words. Don't let anyone take what's yours. But he'd never faced someone like Nora. Young, ruthless, and holding all the cards. Or so she thought. I opened the folder, scanned the contents, then carefully set it down. Interesting offer, but you made one mistake. Oh? Her confidence flickered just slightly. You assumed Brandon told you everything. I pulled out my phone, showed her the email I'd received that morning from the SEC. Did he mention the federal investigation? Or that I've been cooperating with them for the past 2 days? The color drained from her perfect face. In the kitchen, Lucas smiled. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, I knew exactly who my enemies were and how to fight them. Brandon's homecoming dinner filled our dining room with artificial warmth. He'd brought expensive wine, arranged flowers on the table, playing the role of devoted husband while his phone buzzed silently in his pocket. Probably Nora, warning him about our meeting. The Thompson account went well, he said, cutting into his steak. We should celebrate this weekend. Maybe drive up to the lake house? Lucas caught my eye across the table. The lake house, another asset Brandon had secretly mortgaged, according to the documents we'd found. Actually, I said, I was thinking we should host the harvest dinner here this year, like my parents always did. Brandon's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Honey, we haven't done that in years. Exactly. Time to revive some traditions. I took a sip of wine. I've already invited the whole family. Even Uncle Walter. The color drained from Brandon's face so quickly, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. That's not a good idea, he said carefully. With the farm's financial situation, I've been looking into that. I kept my voice light, casual. Found some interesting transactions. The accountant's coming tomorrow to go through everything. Brandon's knuckles whitened around his fork. I handle the finances. Not anymore. I set down my glass. The SEC called again today. They had some questions about offshore accounts. The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. Lucas pushed back his chair. I should check on those spreadsheets, he said, leaving us alone. Brandon waited until Lucas's footsteps faded upstairs. Whatever you think you know, I know everything. I pulled out my phone, showed him the prenup he'd drafted with Nora. Your girlfriend's quite the negotiator, but she should have asked more questions about those accounts before threatening me. Isla. His charm switched on like a light. Let me explain. The harvest dinner's Saturday. Everyone will be here. The family, the bank managers, even those developers you've been meeting with. I stood, gathering the plates. You have 3 days to decide how this ends. He grabbed my wrist, hard enough to hurt. You're making a mistake! No! I twisted free, feeling something inside me harden. I made my mistake 26 years ago when I married you. His phone buzzed again. This time, he checked it. Nora's getting nervous, isn't she? I asked. Wondering if her investment in you is about to collapse? Brandon stood so quickly his chair toppled backward. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I do. I thought of my mother's strength, my father's integrity. I'm dealing with a coward who tried to steal my family's legacy, and I'm done being quiet about it. He moved toward me, but Lucas appeared in the doorway. Everything okay, Mom? Brandon's mask slipped back into place. Just a disagreement about the harvest dinner. Right, Lucas said. The one where Mom's planning to show everyone the forensic accounting reports? The threat hung between us like smoke. Brandon's jaw clenched. This isn't over, he said quietly. No, I agreed. But it will be on Saturday. After he stormed out, Lucas helped me clear the table. He'll try something before Saturday. I'm counting on it. I picked up Brandon's discarded napkin, noticed how his hands had shaken enough to tear it. That's why I made copies of everything. Lucas paused. Mom? What aren't you telling me? I thought of the other documents I'd found, The ones showing Walter's company was on the verge of collapse, taking Brandon's secret investments with it. The evidence of years of tax fraud that would destroy them both. Just remember what Grandpa always said, I told him. The truth has a way of harvesting itself. Outside, Brandon's car engine roared to life. He was probably heading straight to Nora, or maybe Walter, trying to salvage his carefully constructed lies. Let him run. Let him plot. Saturday was coming, and I had seeds of my own to harvest. The harvest dinner table stretched before me like a battlefield. Brandon sat at one end, Walter at the other, both wearing practiced smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Between them, our guests chatted over my mother's old china, oblivious to the storm about to break. Nora hadn't shown up. Her absence spoke louder than her presence ever could. The farms never looked better, Walter announced, raising his glass. Brandon tells me you're considering some exciting new developments. My hand tightened around the USB drive in my pocket. Lucas caught my eye from across the table, giving a subtle nod. The projector was ready in the study. Actually, I started, but Brandon cut me off. We should discuss business later, he said smoothly. Tonight's about family. The word family hit like a slap. I thought of the email I'd received an hour ago, proof that Brandon had already transferred the farm's deed to a shell corporation. He'd forged my signature one final time, betting I wouldn't dare expose him publicly. Speaking of family, Walter continued, I have an announcement. Brandon's being promoted to CEO of Thompson Industries, effective immediately. The table erupted in congratulations. Brandon's smile turned triumphant as he accepted handshakes and praise. Only Lucas and I remained silent. A toast, Walter declared, to the new face of Thompson Industries. I stood, my chair scraping against the hardwood. Before we celebrate, there's something everyone should see. Brandon's face hardened. Isla, don't. The SEC investigation, I began, but suddenly every phone at the table buzzed simultaneously. Brandon's smile widened as our guests checked their phones. I pulled out mine, feeling the blood drain from my face. Breaking news. Thompson Industries announces merger with Global Development Corp. Stock soars. As I was saying, Walter continued, this promotion comes with some changes. The farm property has been acquired as part of the merger. Full market value, of course. My hands shook. That's impossible. I never signed. Check your email, Brandon said quietly. You signed everything last month, don't you remember? The forged documents. He'd backdated them all, created a paper trail so perfect it would take months to prove the fraud. Months we didn't have. You have until Monday to vacate, Walter added. The developers start work next week. Lucas stood. Mom, show them the evidence, the offshore accounts, What evidence? Brandon pulled out a familiar USB drive, identical to the one in my pocket. This evidence? My blood ran cold as I pulled out my drive. It was blank, wiped clean. Somewhere in the house, during the dinner preparations, they'd made the switch. Your mother's been under tremendous stress lately, Brandon told the table, imagining all sorts of conspiracies. We've arranged for her to take some time off, get the help she needs. The room spun. They'd planned this perfectly. Discredit me before I could expose them. Make any accusations seem like the ravings of a desperate woman. You can't, I started, but Walter raised his hand. Please, he said to our guests. Give us a moment with family. As people filed out, Brandon approached me. I warned you not to play games you don't understand. The SEC has closed their investigation. Amazing what the right connections can do. Lucas moved to stand beside me, but Brandon blocked his path. Son, your mother needs professional help. We've arranged everything. Like you arranged Nora? Lucas snapped. Brandon's smile never wavered. Nora's been transferred overseas. A generous promotion, in exchange for her discretion. I thought of my parents, how they'd fought to keep this land, how I'd failed them. Monday morning, Walter said firmly. The developers arrive at 9. They left us there, Lucas and me, standing in my mother's dining room for what would be the last time. Through the window I could see the farm stretching out under the harvest moon. 26 years of marriage, generations of family history, all slipping away like water through my fingers. Lucas touched my arm. Mom, get me Margaret on the phone, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, and find out everything you can about Global Development Corp. They'd taken my evidence, my home, my reputation. But they'd forgotten one thing. A Thompson woman knows how to survive a harsh harvest, and I wasn't finished reaping what they'd sown. Sunday morning, I sat in my father's old truck outside Thompson Industries, watching Brandon and Walter arrive for their victory lap. They'd scheduled a press conference to announce the merger, complete with plans for the farm's redevelopment. My phone buzzed. Margaret's text. Files sent. God help them. Lucas pulled up beside me, parking his car. Nora's flight landed an hour ago. And? She went straight to the SEC office, just like you said she would. I checked my watch. The press conference would start in 20 minutes. Brandon and Walter would be preparing their speeches, savoring their triumph. They'd never see it coming. Inside, the lobby buzzed with reporters and shareholders. Brandon stood at the center, radiating charm, while Walter worked the crowd. Their eyes widened when they saw me. Isla, Brandon moved to intercept me. This is a private event. Nothing about Thompson Industries is private anymore. I handed him a tablet. Check your company's stock price. His face went ash gray as he read the breaking news. SEC launches criminal investigation into Thompson Industries merger. Whistleblower reveals massive fraud. Walter snatched the tablet. What did you do? Me? Nothing. I smiled. But Nora, she had quite a story to tell once she realized you'd frozen her offshore accounts. Brandon's charm cracked. You're bluffing. Check your email. Margaret sent some interesting documents this morning. Turns out your trusted secretary kept copies of everything. Reporters were noticing the tension, drifting closer. Walter grabbed my arm. Security will remove you. Before or after they see this? Lucas stepped forward, holding up his phone. A video played. Brandon and Walter in the study during the harvest dinner, discussing the forged documents, the fake merger, the plan to commit securities fraud. You bugged my house, Brandon whispered. No. I met his eyes. I bugged my house. The one you tried to steal. Cameras were turning our way now. Walter's face had gone from red to purple. Whatever you think you have is already with the FBI. I raised my voice slightly, letting the reporters hear. Along with proof of tax fraud, forged documents, and evidence of how you bankrupted your last 3 companies. Brandon lunged for Lucas's phone, but security moved in. Not to remove me, but to contain the situation. The crowd was growing, phones recording everything. You can't prove, Walter started, but his phone rang. His face crumpled as he listened. When he hung up, he looked ancient. The board, he said to Brandon. They're calling an emergency meeting. The merger's dead. Brandon's mask finally shattered. You stupid bitch. You've destroyed everything. No! I thought of my mother's strength, my father's integrity. I protected what's mine. The farm stays in the family. The only thing destroyed is your illusion of power. Mrs. Thompson? A FBI agent appeared, flanked by others. We need to speak with Mr. Thompson and Mr. Thompson? As they were led away, Brandon turned back. I gave you everything you have. No, I said quietly. You tried to take everything I earned. There's a difference. The press swarmed as Brandon and Walter were escorted out. Lucas put his arm around my shoulders. Mom, you okay? I watched my husband of 26 years disappear into a federal vehicle, thinking of all the quiet dinners, the subtle manipulations, the years of making myself small to make him feel big. The farm needs attention, I said finally. Harvest season's not over. Outside, reporters shouted questions about the scandal, the investigation, the millions in fraudulent deals. But all I could think about was the autumn wind on my face, the smell of earth after rain, and my father's words, "The land remembers who loves it." Brandon had forgotten that. He'd forgotten that real power isn't in boardrooms or bank accounts. It's in the quiet strength of people who know their worth. Let's go home, I told Lucas. There's work to be done. Behind us, Thompson Industries crumbled. But ahead, across the fields my parents had preserved, a different kind of harvest waited. One built on truth, not lies, on legacy, not greed. And this time, I'd be the one tending it. The divorce papers lay unsigned on my mother's antique desk next to the morning's newspaper. The headline still caught my eye. Thompson Industries executives face federal charges. Brandon's corporate headshot stared back at me, his practiced smile now a reminder of all the lies I'd believed. Through the window, I watched Lucas directing the harvest crew across the back 40, the land Brandon had tried so hard to take. The autumn sun caught the golden wheat, making it look like waves of light. My phone buzzed. Nora's name appeared on the screen. I'm not testifying, she said without preamble. Brandon's lawyers offered a deal. I figured they would. I traced my finger along the desk's worn edge, remembering my mother doing the same when making difficult decisions. But you should know, the SEC already has everything they need. A long pause. He said you'd say that. He says a lot of things, Nora. That's why we're both here. The line went dead. Through the window, I saw Lucas wave to someone, Margaret, arriving with another stack of documents. She'd been instrumental in exposing Walter's long history of fraud, earning herself immunity in the process. The doorbell rang. I knew who it would be. Brandon stood on our porch, my porch now, looking smaller somehow. The designer suit was gone, replaced by department store clothes that didn't quite fit. The prosecutors offered a plea deal, he said. I know. 5 years instead of 20. He shifted, uncomfortable in his new reality. If you speak on my behalf. I thought of all the nights I'd spent going through records, tracking his deceptions, protecting what was mine. No. Isla. The farm's latest harvest report. I cut him off, holding out a folder. You'll need it for the asset division. He took it, frowning as he read. His face changed as he understood. These profits, they're higher than anything you ever reported, I corrected. Amazing what happens when you actually invest in the land instead of trying to sell it. The sound of tractors filled the silence between us. Lucas and the crew were bringing in the last of the wheat, just as my father had taught me to do. I never understood this place, Brandon said finally. What it meant to you. No, I agreed. You didn't. He pulled out a pen, signed the divorce papers without reading them. His hand shook slightly. Walter made a deal, he said. He's testifying against me. Like father, like son. The words came out sharper than I intended. Brandon flinched. I really thought I could make you understand. About Nora, about the business. You thought you could make me small enough to fit into your world. I took the signed papers. But I was never the one who needed to grow. He looked past me into the house. Our house once. Now just another thing he'd lost by trying to possess it. What will you do now? He asked. I thought of the agricultural college's proposal sitting on my desk. They wanted to use the farm as a teaching facility, combining traditional methods with sustainable innovation. Lucas had already drawn up the business plan. I'll do what my parents did, I said. Plant seeds and watch them grow. After he left, I walked out to the wheat field. Lucas saw me coming, jumped down from the tractor. Everything okay? I handed him the signed papers. It is now. The wind carried the scent of earth and harvest, just as it had when I was a girl learning at my father's knee. But now there was something else in it, the promise of change, of growth. Mom? Lucas pointed to the horizon. Storm's coming. I watched the clouds gather, thinking of all the storms we'd weathered here, all the ones yet to come. Good, I said. The land could use the rain. We stood together, watching the wheat bend in the wind. Behind us, the farmhouse stood steady, its foundations deeper than any corporate tower. And in my pocket, the key to it all weighed exactly as much as it should, heavy with responsibility, light with freedom. The first drops began to fall.